All right, guys, it's time to talk about wraps. Let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so wraps. This is something I've never done on a build before. Told you guys I would talk a little bit about why I'm doing it first before we kind of jump into what we're doing. So really for me, wraps have always been intriguing. I've never quite known the right project to do them for. I always kind of err on the side of conservative when it comes to color. So, you know, the 993 was silver, 996 I had before that was black, the 991 was black, a lot of white cars, a lot of Land Rover stuff in white. When I did the Range Rover Classic, I actually started to get into more color stuff. That car had to be rust repaired and resprayed anyway, so it kind of prompted in my head, let's kind of figure out a unique and cool color. I did that Balmoral green with black wheels. It looks really, really choice. So when I came across this 997, the gentleman that posted it said, hey, look, full disclosure, the paint's not in great shape. There's a ton of scratches, stuff like that. You know, some of the people thinking about buying it have considered wrapping it, so I just wanted to at least put that out there. So kind of got the wheels turning a little bit, and so I'm gonna cover really the three main reasons I decided to wrap this car. And for better or for worse, you know, that's kind of my logic. I think this is a good candidate for wrapping. That said, I don't necessarily know that every car is. It kind of depends on your budget and what you're looking for, how you use the car, things like that. So first, let's talk about the three reasons I decided to wrap. Number one is the condition of the car today. Like I said, the previous seller said the paint's not in great shape, so the hood is very, very swirled. Now, I obviously do a lot of paint correction, ceramic coating work if you follow the channel, so I could work on that, but honestly, I think that is bad enough to where that actually would require a respray. The front quarters, the doors, the rear quarter panels, those are in okay shape. They're not terrible. They're definitely pretty scratched, but I'm actually pretty confident with an aggressive compound and then a polish and my technique and my Rupes and all those things, I could get those back to about a 9 out of 10. So then the rear wing on the car. The car came with the Aero Kit, factory Aero Kit rear wing, which is great because that's very hard to find. They don't really make it anymore. It's hard to track down. And so I thought we had a really good setup on the rear wing, but it turns out that at some point, don't know if it was a previous owner, might have actually been before them, that was actually painted basalt black, which is a metallic version of that 997 black era. The rest of the car is just regular black. So rear wing had to be repainted. The hood really needs to be repainted. And then I'm doing an Aero Kit on the whole car. And so I've got a new OEM front bumper that would have had to been primed and painted. I've got, you know, side skirts going on the car. I've got all kinds of stuff going on. And so when I added up the cost of basically doing the repainting on the panels that needed it, and then all the sweat equity and some of the supplies from a cost perspective required to paint correct the whole rest of the thing, I determined that for the same money, I could go ahead and get the car wrapped. And so for me, that's number one, which is kind of that price calculation. If you're gonna have to invest about the same amount of money in a car to do a paint correction and ceramic and all that to bad paint because you don't do it yourself, and that can cost several $1,000s with a professional, or you need to repaint stuff, or you're gonna add a bunch of aero or change a lot of the car in terms of heavy modifications, you know, things like that. That's kind of, I think, worth thinking about, you know, spending that same amount of money for something that's really cool. It's a whole new look, color change, that kind of thing, okay? So that's number one. Number two is the fact that when I did the Range Rover Classic, it really just made me appreciate how unique a build can be if you do change the color. I've owned enough black cars, silver cars, and white cars to be ready for something else. You know, in all the other builds, I kept it pretty conservative from a color standpoint, even from a wheel standpoint, sort of in my personality and my nature. So on this one, I decided to kind of go out on a limb and say, hey, I'm gonna do something bold for me. Now, when you see what I chose color-wise and all that, several of you may be in the comments saying, hey, that's not really that bold. You know, people are doing, you know, holographic wraps and like super bright colors and whatever. Well, that's just not me. If you follow the channel, you know that. But for me, doing a different color, a blue, a green, you know, something like that is actually a pretty big departure from the usual. So I'm pretty excited about that. It goes with a whole scheme that I have in mind. I think it's gonna look really, really, really sharp. And so that was number two. I just wanna do something different. And you know what, at the end of the day, from a cost perspective, if part of what I'm spending is just for me and the enjoyment of the car, so be it. You know, I'm always very focused on ROI I put stuff in that I think the next buyer is definitely gonna appreciate, that maybe I get, 50% or maybe a little better of my money back in the sale. I almost never do something just for me. The third reason is my use case, and this one's really, really important, and I think it's often overlooked. So there's all kinds of debate about wraps, how they hold up, do they rock chip, do they bubble, do they come off, all those kinds of things. I spend all this money and then it looks like crap in 6 months or a year or whatever. Well, it all depends on how you're gonna use it, how you take care of it, and who you have the wrap done by. Starting with the last piece, find a really good wrap shop. That goes without saying, but there are people that will certainly do this less expensively, but do not pinch pennies there. The majority of the cost of getting a wrap put on is the labor, and it's because it's an art. And I'm gonna walk you through a little bit of what my shop here in Atlanta, Top Car, did to the car and show you some of the process so you can fully appreciate the fact that this is not something you just slap on. There's a lot of intricacy to it. There's a process and a technique that's learned over time in order to ensure this thing has longevity, doesn't bubble or peel. The other thing to look for if you have shops that you don't know that well are referrals. In my case, luckily, the shop was highly referred by a bunch of people I really trust. If you don't have that, then at least ask them what their warranty is on the labor. They tell you, hey, there's no warranty, or hey, the warranty is 6 months. Well, do your own math. That's not that encouraging. If the warranty is 3 years, then obviously this installer believes in what they can do and the longevity of their product. And many of them, if you find the right ones, will offer to redo whatever it is if it fails. So that's kind of the last part of that. But going back to the use case, the other thing is if your car is garage kept, it's not in the sun a lot of time, you're gonna ceramic coat it in some way. In my case, I'm gonna put G-Technic Halo on this. And you are a detailer, okay? You have a meticulous process, you use 2 buckets, your mitts are always clean, all those kinds of things, and you really take care of this just like you would take care of paint. It will last. I'm gonna be the test of that, but I've talked to enough people who've done wraps and said, hey, I hate it and it's not worth doing, and others that say, hey, it's great and it's an awesome way to change the color for like a third or quarter of the price even. And the ones who love it and still love it today, years later, the ones who really take care of their car, meticulous, coated it, keep it garage kept, and take care of it. They don't put it out in the baking sun. It's not an outdoor parked vehicle, those kinds of things. If any of those apply to you, you don't like cleaning your car, it's gonna be parked outside, you live in South Florida, it's always gonna be in the hot sun, wrap is probably not a good idea for you unless you're okay with the fact that it might last 6 months to a year max. So keep all that in mind. So that's why I decided to do it. That's some of the thought process behind it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take you up to Top Car with me. We're gonna get the car wrapped, show you some of the process, which I think will be really cool for those who haven't seen a wrap before. And then of course, I'm gonna show you the end product. Let's go ahead and head up. All right guys, so we are headed up to Top Car, going to pick up the car. It's been done, it's wrapped. Pretty freaking excited to see this thing. I think the color's gonna look great, but you know, you never know till you see it in person. So let's go ahead and head up.
You've arrived at your destination.
All right guys, so wrap is done. Couldn't be happier with this color. I think this thing turned out awesome. You always kind of wonder when you're setting out on a wrap color how it's going to turn out because they're all proprietary colors. So again, gloss bottle green from Oracal. And it's got, in full sun, as you can see, kind of this really nice like forest green look to it. You know, it has a lot of color. In the shade, it does go pretty dark and leans more towards that like Brewster green or almost like a dark olive, if you're familiar with that PTS color from Porsche. But the contrast and sort of how the wheels and the green work together is spot on. It's exactly what I was going for. The wheels actually look much lighter. So when I had them on the black car or the car when it was black, you know, they had a lot of like warm gold tones to them. Now that they're on the green, you know, this is really exactly what I was going for. You know, that very light gold. And so yeah, couldn't be more pleased. Huge, huge shout out again to Top Car. They did such an amazing job on this thing. Just the attention to detail, the way they tucked everything, the way they wrapped the mirrors, the wing, which was like its own thing, turning the wrap, you know, inside slightly the door jams, even though we didn't do the whole jam because it's black and the interior is black, but you know, they turned it around the corner so that you don't get a visible seam here. You know, it goes all the way in. Just great, great work. If you're anywhere in the Atlanta area or Georgia or maybe even the Southeast, definitely check them out for your wrap needs. Hope you guys like the color as much as I do. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We got a bunch coming. We got aero kit, we got exhaust, we got interior, so stay tuned for the next one.